Imagine waking up every morning with a fire inside you, a fire that refuses to be ignored. A voice whispers in your soul, telling you there's more to your life than what meets the eye. You sense a purpose so big, so profound, it both excites and scares you. Yet when you look around, you feel different, misunderstood, overlooked, sometimes even rejected. Maybe you've wondered, why me? Why now? What if I told you that those feelings, that restlessness, that sense of being set apart, it's not by accident? What if I told you there are clear signs that show you're chosen by God? Not chosen because of your talent, your connections, or your background, but chosen because there's a divine plan written for your life. And the Creator Himself has set His eyes on you. This isn't a message of empty hope or wishful thinking. This is about recognizing the unmistakable evidence of God's hand moving in your story, even when you don't understand the full picture yet. Tonight I want to walk you through 7 powerful signs that prove you are not just anyone, you are chosen. And that truth will change everything. When you are chosen by God, one of the clearest signs is a deep, unsettling restlessness that refuses to leave you alone. It's not the kind of restlessness that comes from anxiety or impatience. It's not about being bored or easily distracted. It's something different. Something spiritual. It lives deep inside you, under the surface, behind your everyday life, and it follows you everywhere. You could be surrounded by people who are perfectly content doing the same thing day in and day out, and yet there's a part of you that simply cannot settle. You try to make it work. You try to play by the rules of the life you've been handed. You clock in, you smile, you do the job, you go through the motions. But the truth is, there's something gnawing at your soul. A quiet voice saying, there's more. There's something else. This kind of divine restlessness often shows up long before you even understand your purpose. It's not about knowing exactly where you're going. It's about knowing that you can't stay where you are. People around you may not get it. They might say you're ungrateful or too ambitious or even unstable. But what they don't see is the conversation happening between your soul and your Creator. This restlessness isn't born of ego, it's born of calling. It's God's way of shaking you awake from a life you were never meant to sleep through. Because when you're chosen, comfort becomes a cage. Familiarity starts to feel like confinement. What once brought you peace starts to feel like a prison, and you can't ignore it anymore. You begin to notice the cracks in the system. You start to see how easy it is for people to give up on their dreams and settle for survival. You start asking questions that other people don't ask, about meaning, about legacy, about truth. You feel emotions deeper and they linger longer. The things that once entertained you now seem hollow. The places that used to excite you begin to drain you. Even your wins don't satisfy you the way they used to. That's not depression, that's not confusion, that's a divine discontent. An indication that your life was meant for more than comfort or applause. And it's not just about success or status. Divine restlessness often has nothing to do with climbing a ladder or achieving a goal. It's more about alignment. You could have the job, the title, the salary, and still feel empty. You could be surrounded by love and still feel like something's missing. And the truth is, Something is missing, not because you're broken, but because you're becoming. That restless feeling is heaven's alarm clock. It's God pulling you out of what's good so He can lead you into what's great. But the process is uncomfortable. It'll make you question everything. You'll wonder why you can't just be normal. Why you can't just be satisfied like everyone else. But that's exactly the point. You're not everyone else. You're marked, you're chosen, and chosen people are often restless people. Even when you try to ignore it, drown it in distraction, numb it with noise, it comes back. At night, in silence, in prayer, or in the middle of a normal day when everything feels fine, the restlessness returns. It's the whisper in your chest, the pull in your spirit, the ache in your bones. It's that sense that your life is meant to touch more than just your own needs. It's your future calling your name, even when you're not ready to answer. And God doesn't rush the process. He lets you wrestle with it. He lets you sit in the tension, not to torture you, but to train you, because if you can't carry the weight of divine restlessness, you won't be able to carry the weight of divine responsibility. This restlessness is not a curse, it's a calling in disguise. It's the birthplace of vision. It's the soil where faith starts to grow. It's how God stirs the spirit before He sets the direction. And if you feel it, if you know exactly what this kind of unrest feels like, then pay attention. That feeling isn't there to frustrate you. It's there to form you. Because before God moves you into destiny, He'll disturb your comfort, not to punish you, but to prepare you. When you are chosen by God, one of the most powerful and undeniable signs is the presence of unexplainable favor in your life. This kind of favor defies logic, breaks rules, and leaves people around you scratching their heads, wondering how things keep working out for you when, by all natural standards, they shouldn't. It's not something you can manufacture or manipulate. It's not tied to your resume, your background, or even your reputation. And something bigger, something divine. Favor doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for qualifications. It moves on your behalf because God has already decided that your life has purpose and no earthly system can overrule His plan. This favor shows up in ways that catch you off guard. You walk into rooms you didn't ask to be in. You get calls you didn't expect. You find yourself connected to people who could have easily overlooked you, but instead they see something in you even when you're unsure of what they're seeing. Doors open, not because you pushed them hard enough, but because they were meant to open for you. And the beauty of this favor is that it doesn't come after you've figured everything out. It often shows up when you're still stumbling through uncertainty, still trying to find your footing, still questioning your worth. That's how you know it's not you, it's Him. You may not have the best track record. You may not have come from the right place or followed the traditional path. But when you're chosen, God places a spotlight on your life that no man can dim. This doesn't mean you won't have obstacles or setbacks. It means that even in the midst of those challenges, there's something different about how you rise. While others are buried by failure, you seem to rise out of it with wisdom and strength you didn't even know you had. That's favor. It's not about life being easy. It's about God's hand being on you even when life gets hard. Unexplainable favor also manifests in timing. You show up at the right place at the right moment, sometimes without even trying. You meet someone who has exactly what you need, a word, an opportunity, a connection. And you realize that had you arrived a minute earlier or later, you would have missed it. These coincidences start piling up, and eventually you stop calling them coincidences altogether. You begin to understand that God has been orchestrating your steps all along, arranging scenes behind the curtain, setting things in motion long before you ever showed up on the stage. You were just following what felt like instincts, but now you know it was divine strategy. People may try to explain your success by saying you were lucky, or that you had good timing, or the right friends, but you know better. You know the doors that opened had no reason to open for someone like you. You know the situations you survived should have broken you. You know the places you stood didn't make sense based on your history. And yet, there you were, standing, thriving, progressing. That kind of favor can't be taught. It can't be bought. It's not inherited through family or earned through effort. It's something that follows you because you've been marked by God. There's also a quiet kind of favor, the kind that shows up in how people are drawn to you without knowing why. They want to support you. They want to invest in you. They want to see you win. You walk into rooms where people feel compelled to help you, to open doors for you, to recommend you, even when they gain nothing from it. And often you're left wondering what you did to deserve it. But that's the thing. Favor isn't deserved. It's bestowed. It's given, not based on merit, but based on mission. God gives you favor to get you where you're supposed to be. And sometimes He'll use people you don't even know, people who don't believe what you believe, to get you there. Favor doesn't mean your life is without resistance. In fact, sometimes favor invites opposition, because not everyone can handle the way God blesses the chosen. But even in the resistance, doors still open. Even in the delays, progress still comes, and even when you feel unprepared, you're still chosen for rooms you didn't plan to enter. That's when you realize God's favor isn't about fairness, it's about faithfulness. His, not yours. He's faithful to finish what He started in you. When you are chosen by God, something inside of you begins to shift in how you see the world and how you carry the weight of others. You don't just think about your own success or comfort anymore. You start to feel a deep, often heavy burden for people, sometimes people you don't even know, sometimes causes you can't explain, and sometimes wounds that aren't even yours. This isn't about charity or sympathy. It's spiritual. It's something placed in your heart that you didn't ask for, and no matter how much you try to ignore it, you can't. You begin to notice pain where others see normalcy. You hear what others tune out. You feel what others brush past. Your spirit becomes sensitive to injustice, suffering, and need in a way that feels overwhelming at times. This burden is not always loud. Sometimes it sits quietly inside of you. growing in silence while the world around you moves like everything's fine. You'll be in the middle of your day going about your business, and suddenly you're struck by the image of someone hurting, or the thought of a broken system, or the cries of people whose voices aren't being heard. It's not just awareness, it's ache. And it doesn't go away with time. In fact, it deepens. And the deeper it gets, the more it pulls you toward action. Not because you want recognition, but because you feel responsible. You feel called. Chosen people often wrestle with this burden because they don't always understand it at first. They wonder why certain things affect them so deeply. Why can't they just turn off the news and move on like everyone else? Why do they cry over things that don't personally impact their lives? Why are they drawn to broken places, lost people, and difficult situations? It's because their spirit is tuned to purpose. And when you're chosen, your heart is trained to break for what breaks God's heart. You start to see people not just through the lens of behavior, but through the lens of pain. You look at someone acting out, and instead of judging them, you wonder what happened to them. Instead of condemning, you start interceding. That's the shift. That's the burden. There's a cost to carrying this kind of burden. It makes you feel like you're carrying something too big for your own hands. You lose sleep. You spend time thinking about how to fix what you didn't break. You find yourself praying for people who may never know your name and crying over situations you can't fully explain. Sometimes you'll feel frustrated that you care so much, frustrated that the world seems so numb, frustrated that your heart feels heavy when you just want to feel normal. But that frustration is part of the assignment. It's what keeps you awake in a sleeping world. It's what keeps your hands open in a world that clings to selfishness. It's what separates calling from convenience. People might not understand you. They may call you too emotional, too intense, or too idealistic, but that's only because they can't feel what you feel. They haven't been assigned what you've been assigned. The burden of the chosen isn't a personality trait. It's a divine placement. It's a signal that your life isn't just for you. It's a tool in God's hand used to reach people that systems overlook and society forget. Sometimes you'll want to run from this burden. You'll wish you could turn it off. You'll try to convince yourself that someone else can do it better, but every time you try to walk away, the burden finds you again. It shows up in conversations, in dreams, in prayers, in random encounters that leave you wondering if God is trying to tell you something. And He is. He's saying, I've chosen you to carry this not because you're strong, but because you're willing. You'll notice that your burden starts shaping your choices. The places you go, the people you connect with, the dreams you chase, all of it begins to center around that one thing you can't seem to shake. That passion that never fades, that ache that never sleeps. And while it may feel like a weight at times, what you'll realize is that it's also a compass. It points you toward purpose. It keeps you humble. It keeps you grounded. And more than anything, it keeps you connected to God. Because you know you can't carry this burden without Him. One of the most painful and revealing signs that you are chosen by God is rejection and isolation. It doesn't always make sense at the time. In fact, it rarely does. You might look around at people who seem to be doing everything right, who fit in perfectly, who are loved and celebrated without effort, and wonder why you feel like the outsider, why you never quite clicked, why the spaces that should have embraced you didn't. Rejection doesn't just hurt your feelings, it cuts into your identity. It makes you question what's wrong with you. But the truth is, the rejection wasn't because something was wrong. It was because something was sacred. Being chosen means being set apart, and being set apart often looks like being pushed aside. People don't always reject what's wrong. They often reject what they don't understand. When there's something different about you, when you carry a weight they don't recognize, when your spirit doesn't blend in with the crowd, people get uncomfortable. You may have been excluded from groups, left out of plans, or even betrayed by those you trusted most. And in those moments it felt personal, it felt like loss, but in reality it was protection. There were rooms your spirit didn't belong in. There were connections that couldn't go where God was taking you. There were relationships that would have distracted you from the deeper work He needed to do in you. The thing about isolation is that it doesn't always feel holy while it's happening. It feels lonely. You pray, and it feels like no one hears. You look for encouragement, and it doesn't come. You want someone to see you, to choose you, to believe in you, and instead it's silence. And yet, even in the silence, something is happening. God uses isolation not to punish the chosen, but to prepare them. He pulls you away from the noise so He can speak clearly. He removes the crutches so you can learn to stand. He allows the distance so you will learn to depend on Him, not them. One of the greatest assignments begin in hidden places. Before you're revealed, you're refined. Before you're launched, you're locked away. And during that time, God works on your character, your vision, your strength. He strips away the need to perform. He heals the parts of you that were performing just to be accepted. He lets you feel the weight of solitude so you'll know how to carry the weight of purpose later. You might not have known why they didn't invite you, why they didn't choose you, why they couldn't see what you had to offer, but God saw. God chose. God knew. And He was more concerned with your becoming than your comfort. Rejection can feel like failure, especially when you're doing your best. You give your heart to something and it's still not enough. You stay loyal, but you're still forgotten. You show up, but you're still overlooked. These moments break something in you, but they also build something stronger. Each time you survive that heartbreak, you grow. You learn to hear God's voice above people's opinion. You learn to move forward without applause. You learn to serve without being seen. That's the kind of resilience that only comes from rejection. It's the quiet strength of someone who no longer depends on the crowd to confirm the calling. Isolation also has a way of teaching you things you wouldn't learn in community. You learn who you really are. You learn what matters to you. You learn how to be still, how to be honest, how to be faithful when no one is watching. These are the lessons that don't come from books or sermons. They come from the wilderness, from the space between called and sent. And in that space, you begin to understand that being chosen doesn't mean constant validation. Sometimes it means walking alone, misunderstood, even doubted, until the fruit of your obedience speaks for itself. God doesn't call you to isolation forever. But when He does call you to it for a season, it's because something in you needs to be formed in the dark. It's where He does His deepest work. It's where the noise stops and the transformation begins. And one day, when the doors do open, when the platform does come, when the people finally see what God has been building, you'll carry a strength that didn't come from popularity or position. It came from rejection. It came from the silence. It came from being alone with God and realizing that was enough. When you are chosen by God, one of the clearest signs is the presence of unshakable faith in the middle of crisis. It's not that you're immune to pain, fear, or doubt. It's not that everything goes smoothly for you. In fact, being chosen often brings storms that test your endurance and push you past your limits. But even in the thick of it, there's a part of you that won't let go. Something in your spirit refuses to give up. You may cry. You may question. You may even fall apart. But deep down, there's still a thread holding you together, whispering that this is not how your story ends. That thread is faith. And when it refuses to break under pressure, that's a sign God is with you. This faith doesn't always look pretty. Sometimes it looks like crawling forward when you can't walk. Sometimes it looks like praying through gritted teeth, not because you feel full of power, but because you've run out of options. It's the kind of faith that grows in the dark, when nothing around you gives you a reason to believe, but you believe anyway. It's the moment when everything around you says it's over, but something inside you says it's not. That voice may be quiet, but it's steady. It may be trembling, but it doesn't lie. And if you listen closely, you realize that faith didn't come from you. It was planted by God Himself. Chosen people often go through more than most. Their path isn't always smooth. Their journey isn't always understood. They face loss, betrayal, disappointment, and delays that don't make sense. They cry over prayers that seem unanswered. They sit in rooms where no one notices them. They carry dreams that feel too heavy and walk through seasons that feel too long. But somehow, through all of it, they keep going. They may break down, but they get back up. They may feel weak, but they don't quit. That's not just personality, that's divine endurance. That's God carrying you when you can't carry yourself. What makes this faith unshakable isn't that it never doubts, it's that it survives doubt. It's the ability to ask why and still say, I trust you. It's not blind optimism. It's not ignoring reality. It's staring reality in the face and still believing that God can change it. It's the tension of feeling forgotten while still choosing to pray. It's holding on to a promise even when the promise feels distant. This is the kind of faith that builds over time in private places when no one is watching and no one is cheering, and it becomes a shield around your spirit that keeps you standing long after others would have fallen. People may look at your life and wonder how you haven't lost your mind. They see the losses, the delays, the setbacks, and they assume you must be numb or naive. But what they don't see is the fight it took for you to still believe. They don't see the nights you wrestled with God, the days you had to choose hope on purpose. They don't understand that the very fact you're still here, still believing, still moving forward, that alone is the proof that God hasn't let you go. He's kept your faith alive even when your strength ran out. Sometimes you don't even notice this faith until you look back. In the middle of the storm, you're just trying to survive, but then you get through it and realize that something held you together. Something made you keep showing up. Something carried you when logic said you should have collapsed. And then it hits you. God didn't just allow the crisis. He used it. He used it to show you what He planted in you. He used it to reveal a level of trust you didn't know you had. He used it to prove that faith is not based on circumstances. It's based on relationship. There's a weight that comes with being chosen, but there's also a grace. And that grace shows up in the worst of times, reminding you that you're not alone. It gives you strength you can't explain, peace you can't earn, and hope that outlasts every failure. You may not have it all figured out, but you have what matters. You have a belief that doesn't break when the world does. That kind of faith isn't built overnight. It's forged in fire. And the fact that it still lives in you is evidence that you were chosen for something greater. When you are chosen by God, your life becomes marked by moments that don't fit the natural order of things, divine encounters that break into your routine and leave a lasting impact on your soul. These aren't always loud, dramatic moments. Sometimes they come quietly, unexpectedly, but they pierce deeper than anything else ever could. You could be sitting alone, driving in your car, walking through a hallway, and suddenly you feel something shift in the atmosphere. A word, a vision, a presence, something you didn't create and couldn't control. You know something holy just happened, even if you can't explain it to anyone else. Chosen people often experience these encounters early in life, before they even understand what they mean. They might have dreams that feel too vivid to be just dreams. They might hear words that repeat in their spirit and won't leave them alone. They might receive messages from unexpected people, people who don't even know their story yet speak into it with eerie accuracy. These moments don't just stand out because they're strange or powerful. They stand out because they awaken something in you. They make you feel seen. They make you feel known. They don't flatter your ego. They reach your spirit. There's a moment in a divine encounter when time feels suspended. The distractions fall away, and everything narrows down to that single moment between you and God. It may only last a few seconds, but it marks you. You can't go back to who you were before it. It doesn't matter where you are in your faith journey, something inside you shifts. You begin to walk through life differently, even if you don't fully understand what happened. The questions get louder, the hunger for more gets stronger, and you start to realize that your life has a weight to it that can't be ignored. What makes these encounters significant is that they don't rely on your effort or your preparation. They come when you least expect them, often when you feel least qualified. They show up in moments of deep need or silence, as if to remind you that God sees you when no one else does. Sometimes they happen during prayer or worship. Sometimes they happen during a breakdown or in the middle of ordinary life. But when they come, they remind you that your story is not random. They remind you that heaven is paying attention. There's something unsettling about being chosen, and these prophetic moments are part of that journey. They don't always answer your questions. Sometimes they raise new ones, but they plant a seed in you, a knowing that won't go away. You could try to return to your old patterns or blend in with the crowd, but these moments make that impossible. The encounter leaves a residue on your spirit. You carry it with you. You hear things differently. You see things with more clarity. You discern things you used to ignore. And even if no one else knows what you've experienced, you can't pretend it didn't happen. Some of these encounters come through people. A stranger speaks a word over you that confirms something you've only whispered in private. A mentor or leader sees something in you and calls it out before you've even lived it. Sometimes it comes through a sermon or a scripture that hits you like it was written just for you in that exact moment. Other times it's through silence, where no words are spoken, but you feel the weight of God's presence settle over you, and your heart breaks open in a way you didn't expect. These encounters don't make life easier, but they give you something stronger than comfort. They give you conviction. They remind you of the calling on your life when the world tries to make you forget. They act as anchors when everything feels unstable. You return to them in hard seasons. You replay them in your mind when you doubt yourself. You hold on to them when the process feels too long and the vision feels too distant. You remind yourself of what you heard, what you saw, what you felt, and that keeps you moving. The chosen don't always have clarity, but they have moments, sacred moments, that tell them they are not alone, not forgotten, not ordinary. These encounters don't elevate them above others. They simply pull them deeper into purpose. And when everything around them seems to fall apart, those moments become proof. Not that everything will go according to plan, but that God is still writing the plan, and they are a part of it. So now you've heard it, 7 signs that you're not just living, you're called. You're not just surviving, you're chosen. Chosen not because you were the smartest, the strongest, or the most popular. Chosen because God saw something in you that the world couldn't. You've felt the divine restlessness. You've walked in unexplainable favor. You've carried the burden of others. You've endured rejection and isolation. You've held on to faith when everything was falling apart. You've encountered moments that could only come from heaven, and you've been pursued by a calling that refuses to let you go. These aren't coincidences, they're confirmations. And while the road may be difficult, it's sacred. Being chosen doesn't mean you'll have it easy. It means your life will have impact. It means your scars will carry purpose. Your story will carry weight. Your voice will carry healing. And your obedience will unlock breakthroughs not just for you, but for others. So walk boldly, speak truth, love deeply, and never forget, if you recognize even one of these signs, then you're not lost. You're marked. You're not behind. You're becoming. May your journey be guided by grace, your steps grounded in purpose, and your heart forever tuned to the voice that called you in the first place. You were not made to blend in. You were made to lead, to heal, to build, to transform. Thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up with open ears and open hearts. And most of all, thank you for being willing to say yes to what God has placed on your life. Good luck. Stay strong. And remember, you are chosen.